redoing this because I forgot to hook up my mic the first time. Is this... Alright, it's on properly. Okay. I've decided to, make a book recommendations list for 2025 because this is already an abominably terrifying year. And, I have a feeling a lot of these books are going to get banned soon. So, on here I have a list of books that I myself have already read and books that are still on my list to finish reading or to start reading. So, we'll start with the ones that I have already read. First up being A Tale of Magic and its sequel, A Tale of Witchcraft. These books are an amazing queer allegory, and as a 7th grader picking it up for the first time and as a junior today, reading it again is incredibly inspiring. It gives me a lot of hope, and I think that hope is one of the most important things to maintain right now. Hope and optimism are inherently rebellion and resistance. So having something that gives you hope that you can relate to is really helpful. So especially if you are queer or you just want a better understanding of queerness to support those around you, I would definitely recommend getting those 2 books. Next up is The March Against Fear. This one I just finished very recently, and a part of it that I really liked was it constantly kept repeating dates. So I should probably explain what it's about a little more. It is about a march organized by activist James Meredith in the 1960s, which, if you think about, really wasn't that long ago, and that's the part of this that I liked, was it kept slapping me in the face on almost every page with how recent it was. It talks a lot about the endorsing violence versus the non-violence views toward civil rights movements, how violence is often more productive, but a lot of people tend to lean toward a non-violent approach out of fear, and because they think that it'll get them more respect when it won't. If you believe that, then I have some news for you. Your oppressor will not have more respect for you because you are not being violent, because you are being silent, because you are fitting into the narrative or the stereotypes that they have created for you, because you listen to them, because you're one of the good ones. None of that is going to make them respect you more. You will always be just a part of that minority group in their eyes, and that is not going to change no matter how you act. So we might as well just be violent and productive. But that's just my opinion. Where was I going with that? Right. At the end, it talks about how the civil rights movement kind of broke off into a few different sectors and had discussed the Black Panther Party. And I don't remember where I was going with that. Hello, I apologize for the sharp decrease in quality and how terrible I look. I am currently filming this on the laptop that I use to edit these videos, which is also my school laptop, and I'm doing it before I got out of bed this morning because I need to get this done for it to be up tomorrow. But I realized here that I did not have the ability to articulate a thought in this moment, so I figured I would finish it for my past self. The book, at the end, brought up the Black Panthers, which, in my mind, I immediately associate with Tupac. I know that it was a group formed in the 70s, but I always think about a lot of the action that they did in the 90s.
because that was a really big decade where a lot of attention was brought to them through the media, again, like musicians like Tupac. And so the mention of the Black Panthers really made me feel more how recent this is. And also, it inspired me in a lot of ways and made me realize that maybe the Black Panther Party is overdue for a resurgence. But I like that it is based on real recent history and it is incredibly relevant still today. The only critique I have in there is that it doesn't have a how to fight against tear gas guide in the section about protesters being tear gassed. But that's kind of whatever. I could also do a video about protesting safety at some point, if that would be interesting. But next book, the next two books are by the same author, Tiffany D. Jackson. Is an incredible author. I love her writing a lot, and I am trying to get more into her. But the two books of hers that I have read are Monday's Not Coming, which follows Claudia, a young black girl in Washington, D.C., after her best friend Monday goes missing. The big problem that I had with this book, and really the only problem I had with it, is that the way it is told is a little disorienting. It switches perspectives and dates a lot. So it was a little hard for me to keep up with at times and keep the plot straight in my head. And the main character, the narrator Claudia, also is suffering some amnesia, so she doesn't realize that Monday had gone missing. So it is a little frustrating to read and a bit disorienting a lot of the time, but it is a beautiful, emotional story about a young black girl going missing in Washington, D.C. And I don't recall what year this was made, but next up, similar to that, we have Let Me Hear a Rhyme by the same author. Another story about a missing black youth, this one taking place in Brooklyn in the 90s, right after Biggie Smalls died. And basically, it follows three characters whose best friend was killed, and the police chalked it up to gang violence, but the main characters know that that is not a possibility because they actually knew their friend, and they are trying to raise money to hire a private investigator, and they use their friend's music that he had been recording that he hid from them to raise the funds for this PI. But I loved the rhymes and the storytelling in this book. I thought that it was beautiful, and it was nice to get three different characters' perspectives, because every chapter switches perspectives. It switches between characters, and I thought that was really nice. Moving into books I have not read, starting at first with The Feminine Mystique. Before anything else, I would like to acknowledge this book was written in the 40s or 50s, I believe. So it does have some huge oversights. If you're curious about those oversights, then I suggest you Google Lavender Menace, which in short is just queer exclusionary feminism. So feminism that doesn't include lesbians or other queer women, calling them a menace, basically. And white feminism, which is exactly what it sounds like, is feminism with a dash of racism, just for a little, I would say flavor, but it is discussing a phenomenon
that is repeating today with the trad wife epidemic, the TikTok trend of trad wives, and the rise of conservatism and traditional marriages among younger people. But it is about how women were not forced back into the home. It's about how, undeniably, a woman being married to a man provides a certain level of security and safety that she could never get on her own in the 50s and today and in upcoming years. And this book addresses and breaks down how women are not forced back into the home. They are not forced back into these traditional dynamics and traditional gender roles of being a wife and a mother. They are lured back in with this promise of safety and security and joy. I mean, we are all tired of the working force, no matter how you identify. People all over are tired of the workforce and exhausted by capitalism. And women are sort of offered this way out of working for a boss when they can work from home, although it is still labor to a boss, to a superior, just a different one. And this labor is instead unpaid. So when you really think about it, it's not much different in that regard. But it addresses the promises being being made at the moment to women about how much better it is in the home in a traditional role, and how conforming to these roles and being a successful wife and mother is kind of perceived or promoted as the peak of womanhood. You're not an achieved woman if you haven't gotten to a certain point in being a homemaker and a mother. And I feel like that has also made a big comeback. Moving on to the next book, Medical Apartheid. This is the real history of how Western medicine was developed. And it was basically all tested on slaves, all practices, all surgeries, all anything in Western medicine today was tested on a slave before it ever saw a white person. And Medical Apartheid breaks down how horrific that obviously was for a lot of people to go through, obviously, but it also delves into how that medical inequality carries on today, how it persists, and I think that that is something extremely important to be aware of regardless of your race, because I would be shocked if you didn't have at least one person of color in your life that you love, that you care about receiving proper medical treatment, you know? Moving on to Hood Feminism, from the Women That Movement Forgot by Mikki Kendall. This one is pretty self-explanatory. The title does make it pretty obvious what it is about. It is about being a woman of color and trying to navigate feminism, which is mostly led by white women. And I, as a white person, am reading this because I believe it is important to hear and acknowledge all sides of feminism, all sides of a movement, and recognize the overlaps and the oversights and the intersectionality between certain issues, because there is a lot of racism amongst feminists and there is a lot of misogyny in the Black community. I say as a white person not knowing much about it, but from what I have heard, from what I have seen, from educating myself and hearing from Black people, there is a lot of misogyny inherent in the Black community. Next up is Evicted, Poverty and Profit in the American City by Matthew Desmond. This one is a more recent book. A lot of the books that I've been recommending have been a few years older. Evicted is a much more recent book, and I believe far more relevant, especially if you are a younger person in America, or a person of any age in America trying to seek housing, and if you've had any sort of struggles with rent or mortgage or anything like that. Especially if you've been looking into renting a property recently, I believe that this would be a good read. I myself have been looking into rentals and apartments and all that, so this book will hopefully equip me with some tools to help navigate that, because I know landlords can be a hassle. So, next on the list is It's Not Hysteria, Everything You Need to Know About Your Reproductive Health, But Were Never Told, by Dr. Karen Tang. As healthcare and education are blatantly being restricted, which we can also talk about in another video, but as these essential things are being heavily restricted, it is important to learn about them while we still have access to the things that can teach us. And this book by, again, Dr. Karen Tang, a doctor, breaks down all of the misinformation and stereotypes about female reproductive health that are just complete lies. And it is extremely important to educate yourself on these things while you still can, and be aware of your body in times like this, and just gear yourself up with all of the knowledge that you possibly can. Next up is Rest is Resistance, a manifesto. This one I have heard a lot of people talking about all over. One of the main things that I have heard, and what I've picked up from reading a small preview of it while looking for an ebook version of this, is that it is designed to help ease guilt about taking care of yourself, about maintaining your well-being, and doing what it takes to be healthy, and prioritize taking care of yourself in the long term, which is something I've really been needing to work on, and something that I think a lot of people need to do recently, especially in this era. Also on this list is The Handmaid's Tale, which I feel like there are a lot of memes about, and you can always watch the series rather than read the book, but I think that reading the book is always a good idea. There's kind of a lot of memes about The Handmaid's Tale flying around, but I believe it is important to actually read the source that they are referencing and figure out why they're referencing it. Next on the list is Bad Indian. It is a book about survivance, essentially preserving Native American culture while allowing it to still evolve with modern times. I was going to read this one anyways because it was recommended to me by a teacher at my school. It is especially relevant now with birthright citizenship of Native Americans potentially being pulled. This is first illogical, and secondly absolutely terrifying, but I believe that educating yourself,
especially when it comes to history, is essential. So I put Bad Indian on there, and it just gives a unique perspective on Native American culture and how it evolves. The last 2 books on here I put on, and they're goals for me personally to read this year because they are common bans, and who knows how much longer these kinds of books will be available. I'm not gonna directly say anything. I'm not trying to imply nothing here, but if you have the financial means to, it would probably be best to stock up on literature before they start burning it. But first we have The Color Purple, which follows a poor black girl in rural Georgia in the Depression era, and it explores topics of violence, sexuality, and poverty, which I think is something we're all going to become a lot more familiar with in upcoming years. I sound so pessimistic when I say that, but it is honestly just a realistic statement at this point, which is so depressing. Next up is The Perks of Being a Wallflower, another common ban exploring topics of queerness, drug use, and sexual abuse, which are common things in daily life that everyone should be aware of if they aren't already. And it's always nice to, if you are already aware of these things, it's always nice to have a story that you can relate to, so it could be a good humanizing outlet for a lot of people as well. The reason it's on my list specifically is because it also is just a kid's journey through high school, which I am currently in high school, so I was really excited to have a story like this to relate to. That is the end of the list. If you have any other book recommendations for people to check out, leave them below. I hope you enjoyed the video. Stay strong. Try to survive. Have a good day.